Top of the evening, one and all. I am Joseph Ford Cotto. Joining me tonight is Halsey English. Halsey, how's it going?
Can't complain at all. Well, I probably could, but I'm not going to bother.
I hear you. No, it's really an interesting time to say the least out there, and a lot of people have a hell of a lot to complain about. But I guess it's better to try to look on the bright side. It's it can beat the alternative, but sometimes the dark side is so overpowering you can't even try to imagine finding your way to a light switch. Anyhow, though, on a brighter note, or maybe not a brighter note, considering the subject matter we're going to get into, but at least we're moving on from moping around. Uh, there are some real problems in modern day America,
You don't
and
say.
yeah, and the new year is coming upon us. So, what better time to discuss what's coming up than right around now? Now, Halsey, traditionally people have hoped for the new year that's going to be better than the last year. But as I've been saying for the last 2 years, it's only going to get worse. And unfortunately, I'm in a position where for this year or this coming year, I have to say it looks like things are only going to get worse. What do you think about my general outlook?
I mean, I don't understand how they could really get better at this point. Like, I mean, we're in a scenario now where any hope that we had that we'd be able to pull this one out or maybe get on to the new and improved whatever. It's just being proven over and over again like we don't have any institutional power at all. Like we don't even have a little bit. So this idea that we're going to be able to pull this one out or vote our way out of it. I mean, look at these last elections. I mean, sky high inflation. The economy is trash. We're in another war yet again. People can't afford anything. Jobs are terrible. And they elected the people I mean, they cheated like hell, but they elected the people that did this to us. I
It,
mean, to add insult to injury, the way they cheated in Arizona is just an ultimate fuck you. Nevada too, but the fact that they elected a potato in Pennsylvania just shows like how little. Like, look, Oz was not like the best candidate, but I mean, it's now just obvious they don't even care what we have to say. Like, they don't consider us true opposition.
Yeah, it's really interesting because obviously America is not technically in a war with Russia, but there's this mess in the Ukraine going on that's certainly having a negative impact upon the countries supporting the Ukraine. And at some point, I mean, it's going to end where Russia gets the land it holds plus some more, and then there's a rump Ukrainian regime, and it's going to be yet another failure for Western so-called global liberal democracy. But all the same, the Ukrainian situation was totally avoidable with regard to the West. I mean, Russia didn't have to invade, let's get real. But at the same time, the West did not have to back the Ukraine in the way that it has to such a disastrous effect. The West thought that Russia's economy would collapse with sanctions. In reality, the ruble did plummet, but then it skyrocketed, and now its value, it's performing better than any Western currency is. And Russia simply took the market share of the West, or not the market. I need to be the amount of businesses in Russia that obviously serve the Russian market. It took the space left by these businesses once they pulled out of Russia and opened them up to China and other countries. And now China and Russia look closer than ever. So basically, large Chinese companies, who are of course tied to the Chinese Communist Party, these places have done very well with the war in the Ukraine. So what's happened basically is that the West has emaciated itself, and it continues to do so. The Ukraine is a war zone; much of it's just rubble, and Russia, even though it's losing a lot of troops, is able to basically withstand that, and it's forging new alliances with different parts of the world, the emerging economies across the world, the developing world, one might say. And so Russia definitely is not in any sort of disaster zone because of what's happened. Meanwhile, people are struggling to heat their houses, not just in the Northeast in Canada, but especially in Europe, where they are much more dependent upon Russian oil.
I mean, we live in a world where America thought, for some odd reason, or at least like Biden thought, or the Democrats thought, whoever you want to consider on this one, they thought that our words still meant something to other countries, which is a joke in and of itself. But like when we said, "Oh no, Russia, you better not do anything. You better not go into Ukraine." Like Russia was like, "Okay, who the fuck are you to tell us what to do?" And we expected all these other countries to jump on board and be like, "Oh no, well we're not going to risk America's ire, so we're going to do whatever it is that you guys ask." No, most countries are like, "We'll buy the oil, cheap enough. Why not?" And so instead of adjusting to that situation, Biden and the Europeans decided like, "Okay, well if you're not going to give us what we want, we'll jump in front of a train. We'll show you." Like, and they basically like everybody's wondering like, when is gas going to go back to $7-8 a gallon? Europe is freezing and burning coal and firewood to keep warm, and yet we're still hearing about how we need to switch over to electric cars, which our grid can't handle what we're doing now, let alone plugging in more electric cars. So the mess that we're creating. It seems like no matter what it is that you can identify as a problem, as soon as you do, they double down.
Yeah, it's really interesting, but the West's various governments are not, it seems to me that they are not interested in having productive outcomes. They're really basically on like a religious mission to force their ideology upon others, which is so-called liberal democracy in the Ukraine is it is ground zero for them spreading that right now. But also the West, I think that the leaders of it very much want to legitimate themselves as not just political figures, but more or less exemplars of an ideology that is a religious one at this point, more or less. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening here. Obviously, the defense sector across the Western world is egging on for more problems with or more funding of the Ukraine because it's making a killing off of the money that's being sent to it through defense contracts. The aid that's sent to the Ukraine obviously is not just money being transferred to Ukrainian bank accounts, although some of it is, but a lot of it is grants given to defense technology firms to develop weapons, which are then sent to the Ukraine. And of course, what's happening, no doubt, is that the Ukrainian so-called leadership is skimming the dollars that go over there, and they're selling off a lot of the defense tech that's sent to them on the black market. They're selling it off on the black market. So it's really interesting to see this, and Congress surely knows what's going on, which is why it prevented an audit from being held for the funds that are sent to the Ukraine. So this is really one colossal joke.
Well, that, and they don't want to be able to openly say what they're actually doing. They can't supply Ukraine with most weapons from America because the only way that they could learn to use them is if we put boots on the ground and have our people there showing them, which could basically lead to a nuclear war with Russia. So what they're doing is they're having all the Eastern Bloc countries like Poland and Estonia and all of them. They're selling their old Russian or they're just giving their old Russian garbage to the Ukrainians, while our government and our defense contractors are just replacing their old Russian garbage with new American shit. So it's like basically we gave them the first hit for free, and now they're on the crack pipe for the rest of their lives. Like now they're gonna have to depend on Uncle Sam for all these things, and it seems like I mean, I don't think it's gonna end. I mean, this guy Zelensky, he has the balls to come to our Congress and start. He's like, "Oh, listen, I know you guys have given me like what is $100 billion. It's not enough. Like we need more. I mean, look at my sweatsuit, for God's sakes." And I mean, America's chief exports used to be manufactured goods, agricultural goods, defense equipment, but now our main export is global homo and feminism. Like these are the things we export now. Like we actually judge the people we're going to be friends with on those points. We're like, "Oh, okay, you want to be a close American ally? Like, how do you treat like 8-year-olds that want to cut their dicks off, or like how do you treat gay marriage, or things like these are the things that we want and expect our allies to get on board with us, even though anybody with eyes can see what it's done to us. Why would you want to get on board with an American agenda at this point?"
Obviously, because a lot of the leaders in various countries get money from Uncle Sam that they wouldn't be able to get elsewhere. But I think that what's happening with the Ukraine essentially is that the aid which it's receiving is not sustainable. Even the Republican House is unlikely to, very unlikely. Most Republicans in the House didn't even attend Zelensky's speech, which is a very good sign of things to come. It's unlikely that another quote unquote aid package, such as what just passed, will be viable once the GOP holds the House. So this is, I think, sort of like the Ukrainian government getting its last major round of quote unquote assistance from Uncle Sam. And then obviously other Western governments aren't going to be funding the Ukraine that much either. In Europe, they just have no ability to at this point. And Canada, more or less, it spent up its military, its defense capabilities, the money that would be reserved for that on the Ukraine. So it's really the West just does not have this amount of money to give to the Ukraine anymore. And I would say that when it comes that there simply is not the level of funds available for the Ukraine, it's over. I mean, there still will be fighting between the Ukrainians and the Russians, but the Ukrainian government will be forced to do peace talks with Russia. And obviously, what I've been saying this for quite a while now, Russia is just engaged in a waiting game. It's waiting out the West and its support of the Ukraine. And it has the ability to do that. It has many more soldiers than the Ukraine has. I believe 70% of Ukrainian conscripts sent into battle die. A great deal of Russians die, but Russia has people to replace the folks who die, and the Ukraine does not. So it's really it's sad, terribly sad that this is happening. But I think the inevitable end is the defeat of the Western imperial project in the Ukraine, which is, for those who don't know, it's to turn the Ukraine into another EU country and basically a frontier land with Russia where NATO troops would be stationed to more or less agitate Putin. But that, I think, dream is vanishing. And the Ukraine is going to have to accept a lot of its territory being no longer under its control, however unfair that might be. And the West is just going to have more egg on its face. I mean, after Afghanistan, we basically see that things can get very bad indeed when it comes to just sheer embarrassment of failed imperial projects. And I don't think the Ukraine is going to be something which increases the morale of American imperialism.
While I agree with you on that, I don't think that the financial teat is even close to dry. Because anybody who's like, I mean, Kevin McCarthy is most likely going to be speaker, I think. But he's just as on board the Ukraine train as everyone else. Like, yeah, there might be some opposition in the GOP, but there's 100% support for more money for Ukraine among Dems. So all Kevin McCarthy has to do is get 10 Republicans on board. And, the Senate will go along with it. So I think this is going to get, by the end of next year, expected to get to $200-300 billion at least that we give them, if not more.
I think that it's unlikely that that level of spending will be allowed by a Republican House. I think that the people who control the committees probably won't get it through. I think McCarthy would fear extreme backlash from his caucus, and he does want stability above all else, so he could have a speakership to begin with. So I think that there still will be funding of the Ukraine, but not to the extent we see now in the U.S. or elsewhere. I think that perhaps the Ukrainian government will wind up having a peace deal with Putin by the middle of next year. I think that by the springtime, the situation of the Ukrainians is going to be absolutely dismal, and obviously the West, particularly, well, I mean, all of the West, well, not really Australia and New Zealand, but the U.S., Canada, Western Europe, the EU generally, these places are going to be is so economically devastated, especially when it comes to the energy sector, and particularly when it comes to the energy sector in the EU, that I don't think there's going to be much will for this massive funding of the Ukraine, even though some funding will continue.
I don't see it. I think that this gravy train is going to just keep going because I don't think anyone cares anymore. Like it used to be that at least the Republicans and to some extent the Democrats, they at least would pay lip service to some level of fiscal responsibility. They would at least like talk about the fact that we can't keep spending the way we're spending. Those days are over. Like no one's really talking about that anymore. The most the Republicans will talk about is that you can't spend as much on the crap the Democrats are spending it on. But they have no intention of spending less or of getting our fiscal house is destroyed. We are so screwed financially, and no one's even willing to address that at this point. I mean, we're seeing the highest levels of inflation we've seen since the Great Depression. And they just passed another $1.7 trillion spending bill. Like it's so out of control. I really don't think they care. I don't even think that they're gonna try anymore.
Why do you think they wouldn't care? Because it's a very good question. Why do you suppose they wouldn't?
Because there's a certain point where you realize that it doesn't matter what you do. Like if you're looking at all your friends, right, and all of you have a credit card, none of you have any money, but each one of you has a credit card, and you say, listen, guys, if each of us takes a quarter of the money on this credit card and pays the rent and buys groceries, but then we don't spend any more money, we can probably get through this and weather the crisis, pay off the credit card debt eventually, and survive. But then the other three people go, oh no, fuck that, I'm going out partying. And they each take their credit card to do it. And you know your credit card won't last anyway. So you just say, well, screw it. I might as well have fun before they come take and kick me out. That's what we're doing right now. Like, I just don't think that, I think that the politicians believe the only way they get votes is by buying off constituencies. Mm-hmm. And if everyone else is going to do it, they're going to do it too. So, because ideological arguments don't matter anymore at all. Yeah, was there a turnout higher because of abortion? Yeah, there probably was. But the country is in such a shambles. The idea that John Fetterman actually got elected, or that, a week after all the votes were in, all of a sudden they figured out that Arizona and Nevada really went Democrat. I think at this point, everyone realizes that it's all hopeless. So they're just going to each try to buy off as many constituencies as they can.
I think that, I know for a fact abortion played a big role in ginning up Democratic turnout, particularly in Pennsylvania, and outranked inflation as the top issue on voters' minds. I think that abortion, a lot of Republicans, I know for a fact, not even I think, they really were of the opinion that it would not matter because the economy would outpace it, but obviously that was not the case. Right now, politics are tribal. They're about basically tribal dominance. And this happens in a so-called society, which is fracturing and fraying, as America is, where there's no commonality, no shared culture, no mutual identity, not even a single language that people use to communicate in. So we see immense dysfunction in the America of today, and the tribal politics that I referenced are a big part of that. And within this tribalism, one gets the sort of vote buying state of affairs, which Halsey mentioned. It's very unfortunate that things have regressed to this point, but they have. And I think they'll get much worse, which brings us to discussing America's future. Now, Halsey, some people say that America's best days are still ahead. This is a common theme on the right, or at least in the Republican Party, if you want to call politicians who are saying this on the right. I guess it depends what your definition of right wing is. But there's no question that the idea that America's best days are still ahead is still held and vocalized by some. On the Democratic side, they would say that America is becoming, quote unquote, more just, more equitable, and more inclusionary. And I guess that's their way of saying our best days are still ahead. I don't think America's best days are still ahead from any point of view, Republican, Democratic, left, right, center, whatever. I think America clearly is a declining power. And I think that what it has in store ultimately is a journey to second world nationhood, and after that, third world nation status. Anything to say about any of this?
I think that you lack vision, my friend. That's what I think. I think that all of us believe that America's best days are ahead because we are just 2 short years away from President Ye. So and he's gonna save us. Don't worry. Like, everybody's quaking in their boots. They know that America will be back the day that Ye puts that stocking over his face, and raises his hand and swears to Jesus that him and Nick Fuentes are going to make America great again. I think then we'll all truly know that we've been saved.
What do you think about this thing with Fuentes and Kanye slash Ye slash West? Because they sort of disappeared from the picture. And I think Fuentes now is no longer living at Ye's whatever. I think he was domiciled at Ye's compound and he was doing shows from Ye's place, but then Ye got evicted. And so Fuentes now says he's going back to doing his normal show. I presume he's back in Illinois and he's no longer relocated to the West Coast. I think that Yay 24 is not really a thing, and I think that it will just it's fizzling out now, but I think it'll be totally fizzled out by next month. But I think that Fuentes has gone so far now, openly praising Hitler as he is, that I don't know if there's even a place for him as being a big voice on the fringe. I think he's probably just going to self-destruct in some massive way over the next year or two and more or less be reduced to something like a Mike Enoch type.
Well, you see, what Fuentes probably realizes that sooner or later, it's going to come out that him and Kanye were fucking each other, and he knows that it'll probably come out from Kanye because Kanye doesn't care. Kanye has he has diarrhea of the mouth. Like there's nothing he can do to stop himself from opening his mouth. So Fuentes probably realized like if he stays there and is Mrs. Ye for too long, he won't be able to deny it. But I think now he'll just kind of deny it, you know. But I think that that's definitely going to come out. And I mean, how could it not? Like, I mean, it's not like Ye came out of nowhere and was he was rolling with like politicians and drumming up support like Fuentes. He was Mr. White Nationalist, wasn't he? He was like the white race will rise up, and then it rose up in the form of a mentally ill black Hebrew. Like, I mean, it's so ridiculous that Catboy Fuentes, reformed homo Milo, and mentally disturbed black Hebrew Israelite Ye all got together to basically say two things. Hitler is awesome, and that they're going to win in 2024. It almost feels like they were paid to just like make Trump look bad for like a week. And man, did they take the wind out of his sails. Now look, you've heard me say it, anyone else, I've said it to anyone who will listen. I do not think Trump has a prayer of winning in 2024. Even before 2022, when I wasn't positive that cheating would rule the day, like I still didn't think he could win, but now I really don't think he can win. So I don't even think he's gonna get a significant amount of the vote. Like I think he'll get, maybe 45% of the vote, but he's not. This isn't going to be a squeaker. And that's because the idea of a swing state, it's over. There are no more swing states. The only swing state maybe that's left is Georgia. Is just because Georgia has a Republican governor and a Republican legislature, they can have some level of election integrity, which they'll probably still lose just because of demographics. No. But Arizona, Pennsylvania, Nevada, these are not swing states anymore. Like they are firmly blue and will be forever because now they have Democratic governors and legislatures. And every single thing that they saw that they need in order to keep cheating, they're just going to make sure that that's in place for 2024 because 2024 is endgame. If they take the House, the Senate, and the presidency, the filibuster is gone and they will pass the For the People Act. They'll pack the court. They'll open the border. They'll do whatever they feel like doing to make sure that the Republicans are more of a joke than they are now.
There's no question the Democrats get a trifecta. They're going to try to engineer the country's electoral process in a way that permanently benefits the Democrats and places the Republicans more and more on the margins. They want a one-party state across the country as they have a one-party state in California and New York. That's really what they're after. Not a conspiracy theory. It's just what they want. And if they get something like For the People through, they will attain that. And I think that the Republicans do not have a good chance of winning in 2024. I think they have a better chance than what Halsey says, but that's not a good chance. It's still, I think, unlikely that they would carry the day 2 years from now. So I think what the GOP needs to do is place foremost emphasis on holding at least one house of Congress at any given time. Ideally, they'd hold both. But if they could hold just one, then that's fine, because then things can sort of coast. And bad as things are, it's better that they coast on unfortunate as opposed to accelerate to excremental. So I really think the GOP needs to focus on being a parliamentary party at the national level, and it needs to not get caught up in winning a presidential race. That's not to say it should, cede a presidential race to the Democrats. What it should do is just not make a big deal about the presidency. The race goes on, but it should really make a big deal about controlling either house of Congress. Whether or not it would do that is beyond me, but it should pursue that strategy, because it really does not have a good chance at all of winning presidential elections from here on out.
See, that's the problem, though, is that 2024 is a presidential election year,
Mm-hmm.
which means the highest voter turnout of any election will be in
Yeah.
2024. It's not going to be a problem of low turnout. It'll
Mm-hmm.
be a problem of high turnout. And the Republicans, like you said, they have no prayer. Like they have literally no prayer. Trump can't win. He has his strong base. I give him that. He has his MAGA base, but that's all he has now. He hasn't done anything to impress the middle. Democrats still hate his guts, and half the Republican Party hates his guts. So and I could understand if starting right now he was talking about the border, and he was talking about healthcare, and he was talking about gun rights, and he was talking about, he's not. All he's talking about is the fact that they cheated in 2020. That's the only thing he talks about. That, and he endorses really crappy candidates. Like, I mean, Carrie Lake, she was a decent chance. She was fighting against an uphill battle that she probably never was going to win.
Mm-hmm.
But she's managed to put herself in the same boat as Trump now. You see, Carrie Lake should have been complaining about the cheating all the way leading up to the election. But she still believed everything was on the up and up and it was going to be all fine until they screwed her over. After they screw you over, it's too late. You've already lost. Convincing a judge in this country to go back to the drawing board and just do a do-over, it's unrealistic. It's only realistic if it was so outlandish that they can't even hide it or even justify, keeping it going. But I think Trump's going to be the nominee. I think Trump's going to get trounced. And I think that the Democrat turnout, the Senate will be fine for them. It'll probably be just where it is now, maybe even better. And the Republicans have one shot at the House. And if the turnout had been the same level it was during the 2020 election in 2022, I don't even think they would have gotten the House.
Very unlikely that they would have had or attained the U.S. House. They didn't hold it; they got it. I think that when it comes to the Senate, I think the Republicans stand a decent chance of taking it back very narrowly because of the map in 2024. It's just a question of which states are having races, and the GOP does have a friendly map. That's not to say they're guaranteed of winning a majority of them, but they can do it. It'd be a narrow, like maximum 52-48, probably more like 51-49. But if the GOP does that and they hold on to the U.S. House, and it would be a narrow hold. It'd probably be like what they have now, give or take a few seats, and I mean a very few seats. That's, to me, that's a victory. it's just preventing one party Democratic rule in D.C. I really want to see the GOP take the Senate so they don't keep getting these Biden justices through, which are, I think, very obviously going to rule against freedom of speech and freedom of association. It's really a dastardly situation in which the Republicans find themselves. Something else that's dastardly is that America is becoming a more and more difficult place to do business. It used to be that people came here from across the world because they wanted to partake in the business process, start a company, be innovators in the marketplace, so on and so forth. However, nowadays, it looks to me like America really does not have the same spirit of innovation which it once does. It's had many more regulations placed upon various businesses as of late. Obviously, COVID was a big impetus for that, but now starting obviously in 2025, I believe, any company is going to have to report to Uncle Sam who its owners are or something to that effect. And they're actually going to have to pay money to do this for the pleasure of filing this report. So, I mean, the fact of the matter is, when it comes to business in America, things are becoming much more stagnant. And in some places, I mean, businesses are just fleeing. Big places like California and New York and Illinois. So I think one thing that's not often discussed is that America is no longer this hub for innovation. As a matter of fact, where the future is in terms of the global economic superstructure is the developing world. It's BRIC. Some say BRICS, including South Africa, but South Africa at this point is really just a vassal of China. BRIC is obviously Brazil, Russia, India, China. I would actually call it BRIM because I think Mexico is going to be a power going forward. He just has to deal with the cartel situation. And I think in time, economic development, more than anything else, will reduce the power of the cartels because people won't turn to them for careers anymore. They'll enter the legitimate marketplace when it comes to employment. So it's really interesting to see what's happening. But I think that America no longer is a hub for innovation and entrepreneurship. What do you think, Halsey?
Number one, America is a wasteland. Like, even if you came out with a great idea, a new company, you had the capital to do it, everything was in your favor to innovate here in America. The only thing they would care was how many gay people were on the board, whether you funded out of state abortion travel, and whether you were like having drag queen story time during breaks. They don't care anymore. Like, they don't care about you making money. They don't care about you providing jobs. Those are secondary, concerns to the people in power right now. So, and Mexico, the cartels are going to go the same way that the mafia did. Sooner or later, there's no reason to stay illegitimate if you could just take all that money you made and just go legitimate. They'll start buying shopping malls and, telecommunications companies and all strip bars and I'm telling you, they'll just go legit. Yeah, they'll still, punt fentanyl and women over the border. But America, again, we're a wasteland now. Like, there's nothing. We're not benefiting anybody anymore. Like, we're not doing it. Like, what the cartels, they were sending all the drugs here because the money was here to buy all the drugs. Now they're sending drugs that kill everybody because they just don't care anymore. They're like they don't look at us as long-term customers even for the drugs. They just look at us like, okay, we'll drain whatever fat we can off the top of the soup and then we'll just leave it to boil. I mean, they're lacing meth with fentanyl. They're lacing cocaine with fentanyl. Like, it's not even to the point where they care anymore. Like, why poison all of your users? Well, because they don't care anymore. It's just something they do now. It maybe even used to be a challenge. It used to be a challenge to get the drugs over the border, and it was so worth it to set up these smuggling rings. Now they just hand it to someone and they just walk over the border as if, there's no trouble to it. And as I said, they don't care how many of us they kill anymore.
Do you remember? I'm sure you've seen the film Scarface without the Al
Of
Pacino
course.
version, directed by Brian De Palma. Well, a big turning point in the movie is when I don't want to really get into the plot. I'm sure a lot of people have seen it, but it takes too much time. But Antonio Montana works for a local drug lord in Miami, and they're having real problems getting their product into the country because this is in the early '80s, and the federal government was starting with satellite tracking, and they were really using the Coast Guard aggressively to get shipments before they reached land. And this spurred the need for Montana's boss to strike a deal with a South American and Bolivian drug lord who is actually much wealthier than the Miami drug lord. But anyway, the fact of the matter is that the turning point comes because Montana believes that they could have an aggressive importation strategy, whereas his boss thinks that they can't. And it eventually culminates in Montana stopping no longer working for his boss and going into basically becoming his own boss and entering a partnership with this Bolivian drug lord it. Needless to say, that makes his ex-boss very angry, and the plot unfolds from there in some very bloody, over-the-top ways. But the fact of the matter is that what Halsey says is correct. Once upon a time, these drug kingpins were very concerned about getting their stuff into the U.S. I even forgot the number of shipments that they were losing in Scarface, but it was substantial. Today, the drug lords in Mexico are much more casual about it. Like as Halsey said, they just send people over the border because the border now is effectively open, even though Uncle Sam doesn't admit as much. It basically is. So it's sort of what was this, something that needs to be really carefully planned and brilliantly coordinated in Scarface 40 years ago. Today, to these drug lords in Mexico, it's just something very casual and sort of, I would imagine, like a joke to them. I bet they're wondering how dumb can this so-called country to the north be. So it's really fascinating to see how less seriously America takes itself and how some terrible, terrible organized crime syndicates benefit from this.
Well, also they used to have to set up like smuggling routes. They had to grow the coca in South America, process it into cocaine, bundle it up, get it into the country, distribute it, and then get the money out of the country, or at least keep it in the country, like whatever. Now they just order the precursor chemicals for fentanyl from China, or for meth from China, and they just have it shipped FedEx to Mexico, where they just mix it up in a bathtub. And like, I mean, a pound of fentanyl could probably kill 1 million people, if not more. So it's almost a joke now. Like they don't have to pack, hollowed out tractor trailer trucks with cocaine or anything anymore. They just have to send someone over with a backpack, and that's enough fentanyl to take care of basically a whole city. There's no effort anymore. Like it's a joke now, and they're probably. I remember how long ago was this? This is probably 15 years ago. There was all these stories about Russia, right? They had drugs. One of them was called Crocodile, which was like they took codeine cough medicine, and they like extracted the codeine from it and injected it, but if it didn't all go into a vein, it would make their skin rot off. So like you would literally see like junkies that were like their hands were just bones because all the skin around their hands and on their arm had basically like, and they were still doing it. And I remember thinking back then, like, why would someone do that? Like, why wouldn't they try to find a drug that didn't melt your arm off? Like it just would make sense. And it was because nobody gave a shit enough to import heroin into Russia. It was just worth it to them to just go to the pharmacy and buy crappy codeine pills and mix them with some chemical and sell them because they just didn't care. And there was a whole bunch of drugs like that they were basically just killing people. And the people were still doing it. We're those people now. We're the ones that the dealers don't even care about keeping us hooked. They just care about selling whatever they've got because they realize the train's coming to the final station.
Yeah, when you say where, I presume you're metaphorically, obviously, talking about the United States government not having any foresight for the future. Is that correct, or are you referring to somebody else?
No, that's what I mean. Like, what is our future? What like how are we on a path to success in anything? I mean, our borders. They said that since Biden has been in office, something like 2 million illegals have come over the border that are just here. So if that trend holds and they get rid of Title 42, what, 5 million, 6 million new illegals are going to come before Biden's first term is up, and then second term will be just as bad, so another 8 million, 10 million people. Like, we don't have the jobs anymore. Our jobs are garbage. Like, basically, you can come to America, you can pick vegetables or clean houses. You can drive for Uber. You can stock shelves at Walmart. Like, we don't have big industry anymore. Our industries have all went overseas. And any attempt to bring them back is just met with derision and laughter. We had a natural resource industry. We had an oil industry. But do you know how long it's been since we built a new refinery? I think the last one we built was in the 70s. Mm-hmm. And the oil companies have straight up said there is zero incentive to build another one. It costs billions of dollars, and it takes 10 years before they make back the money that it costs to build a new refinery. Do you really believe the government's going to support them for 10 years, or even support the industry? You know, we build pipelines, and then a year before they're supposed to launch, we just cancel them. Sorry, guys, everybody's fired. We'll see you later. But what about the oil? Oh, they'll just sell it to China. It's not a big deal. You
Yeah,
know?
obviously, if one is running an oil company, the smart play is to set up a refinery somewhere like Mexico, where they have much more lax regulations. As a matter of fact, the president of Mexico and his party, even though they are declaredly socialist, they're very, very pro oil and natural gas. And so the smart move would be, say, for Shell to set up a refinery in Mexico and then import the oil to the U.S. Obviously, would not benefit the American worker, but it's better for the company. You can't blame the company for doing what it needs to do in order to survive.
It's not just that. I mean, not every country is as stupid as Venezuela
Hmm.
or the Soviet Union. Like, not everybody wants to starve. Like, yeah, there are plenty of authoritarians that love the idea of staying in power, but they're not trying to just kill everybody by starving them to death. You know, it's basically like us that stopped them from just going full Venezuela across most of the country. But now, I mean, look at Ireland. Ireland took how much of our corporate business for
A
all those years
tremendous deal.
with the phenomenal tax rates? You don't think
Hmm.
Mexico and South America are going to start doing that now? Of course they are.
Hmm.
There's no benefit to investing in America right now. None. You know, even anybody that is investing in America, as soon as they start investing in America, they turn to the government. The government's like, oh, we should hit them with a wealth tax. They're making too much money. You know,
Hmm.
it's truly a sad future because there's nobody left that's talking about doing anything good. All we're
Hmm.
talking about right now is either stopping the bleeding or burning it down so that we can hopefully build something new.
What do you think the Democrats' long-term economic outlook is? Because, as is the case, even in Mexico, a socialist government understands that it has to have certain enterprises in order to bolster its welfare state. That's it, fundamentally. In the U.S., it looks like the people here on the left are not as forward-thinking as they are on the other side of the Rio Grande. So, what do you think the Democrats expect to come of the economy in the long run? And how do you think they expect to have whatever arrangement they foresee support their desired welfare state?
They don't, because the majority of the Democratic leadership are ancient. Like, I mean, look at them all: Pelosi, Schumer, Biden, Feinstein, Waters. These people are old, and I mean like way past Social Security, senior citizen, dementia old. You know, and the next generation are so stupid that I don't think there's any hope that they're gonna pick up the mantra. Like AOC and Jeffries and all of these people, all they care about is spending money. They don't care where it comes from. They don't have any idea how economics work. They don't care about businesses at all. They will be more than happy to go full Venezuela on this country. And then at some point just start crying like, "Hey, how come there's no more money left?" You know, but
Uh,
I don't think the Biden Pelosi generation, I don't think they give a flying shit. I don't think any of them expect to be here when things get really bad. They're just putting money under the pillow for right now.
Very interesting. So there's really sort of a nihilism among the Democrats here relative to the left in some other countries.
Well, think about it. The left in other countries, they at least want to control the country.
Mhm.
Pelosi, Biden, Schumer, they already do control the country. There's no more power for them to have. They might want to assume that that ensure they don't lose it before they want to.
They
But
want the Supreme Court in the U.S. House, though, no question about that.
what? What was that?
I said they want the Supreme Court in the U.S. House, though, no question about that.
Oh, sure, but you know, the Supreme Court is only a matter of time, and so is the House. As I said, 2024, the chances of the Republicans pulling off even one branch of government, I think, are very, very slim. I think they know they're going to get all three branches in 2024, and I think they will immediately they'll nuke the filibuster, they'll pass all the voting reforms, and they'll add another 10 justices to the Supreme Court, and then it's over. Then there's nothing left to fight for anymore.
Looking at people like AOC, why do you think they don't have more of a vision for at least a sustainable so-called democratic socialist platform? Why do you think that they're more focused on these programs that, if implemented, will maybe survive for a year, if even that, before crashing and causing massive economic devastation? You would think that if they want to have a socialist economy, they would understand that central planning is a big part of that, and the programs that they're advocating for they really don't lend themselves to central planning because they're so unsustainable that you can't even develop a long-term plan for them. It seems to me that they lack any kind of, not talking about the older people, like once again the younger ones who are more left-wing than the older people, but it seems like the younger Democrats don't really have a vision for a serious vision for the future. Why do you suppose that is? Because they'll be around for the future. One would think that they would be interested in promoting policies that work over the long run.
Because they've never lived in a world where other people didn't pay for their lives. Like, and you think that AOC, everyone laughs, oh, she was a bartender before. Like, do you think she had an apartment and a nice house and like all of that stuff when she was a bartender? No, she lived with her parents.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like her mom's credit card was how she survived.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how she treats politics. Like she doesn't have any plan on how to pay for things. She doesn't even care that things have to be paid for. She, like, to her, it's just, no, if this is going to cost $19 trillion, then we come up with $19 trillion. And telling her we don't have it, it's just she'll go, oh, well, then we have to get it from the people who do. In her mind, that the money's there, we're just giving it away to people less deserving than her and her people. So it would take them, if when the older guard of the Democratic Party dies off, like, it'll take the younger guard less than 5 years to completely fuck everything up.
And say the younger guard does completely screw everything up, and the country is something like Venezuela. What do you think they would do then? I mean, obviously, if the country is not functional, they really can't exercise power. A lot of Venezuela today, even though it's called a dictatorship, is basically lawless because the government doesn't have the means of exercising power. What do you think these Democrats would do then? The ones who, would be young enough to be around for this down the road. Do you think they, I think it's fair to say they don't have any plan for what they would do, but knowing them, what do you think would be their move at the time?
Their move at the time will be, until it doesn't work anymore, and then I don't think they know what they'll do, is they lie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, the level of bullshit that comes out of, like, listen, politicians have always lied. And we've always been able to step back and go, oh, well, all politicians lie. But they lie at an extent now that I don't believe has ever been seen before. Like, I mean, just the Philadelphia Fed, right? Amazingly, a month after the election, they say that the 10.1 million jobs that Biden created in his over the last year, yeah, they were. I mean, it was 1.3 million jobs that Biden claims he created. They were off by 1.2 million. He only created 10,000 jobs. But he's been saying, and all the government's been, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, all of them have been saying, he created 1.2 million jobs. It was 10,000. And they're like, oops, sorry. That's what they do now. They so bold-faced lie, and they just expect everybody to kind of say whatever they want. Like, how many times do you see in a day, if you're on Twitter or Facebook or you just turn on the radio, anything, right, that you say someone say that Zelensky is literally the tip of the spear of the defense of democracy. They don't know where Ukraine is. They don't know how long Ukraine has been a country. They don't know any of the regions. They don't know anything about Ukraine. But they will lecture you that they are literally the tip of the spear of the democratic world. And if you tell them, no, do you realize, like, Zelensky outlawed all opposition parties. He shut down any press that were critical of him. He's gone after the churches. Like, if you tell them that, they look at you and go, why are you lying? Like, why do you need to lie?
You're right.
You're
absolutely right.
And there's nothing you can say. Like, they're pure NPCs,
Uh-huh.
I just got to warn you, I got like 5 minutes left. Okay.
Sure, no problem. The second to last thing. Now, why do you suppose it is that the actually that would not be a good way of framing the question. I'll put it differently. What do you think the future is of the right in this country? What will become of it? Because even if there is some sort of one party left wing ruling set in DC, places like Kansas or Oklahoma or Alabama, most people in these places are still going to be at least right of center. What do you think their fate will be?
They're not right of center. They used to be a little bit more right of center. There's certain things that they're probably not going to like give up on that much, and that'll be guns. And but I mean, if you have ever been to Alabama or Mississippi or Louisiana or Kansas or Oklahoma, their farms aren't hiring white Americans to pick the strawberries or the corn or anything. Like they've been hiring illegals since as long as we can remember, since the end of the Civil War. You know, like if you go to Arkansas, like Little Rock is a toilet.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so is Birmingham, Alabama. So is New Orleans and Shreveport. So's
Mm-hmm.
Biloxi and all of them. They're all toilets, and it's been that way for a long time. It used to be that the good old boys club, that was considered right of center, was a religious thing. Like these were all like kind of like real hardcore Baptist,
Yes.
like type people, and they just it wasn't that they were right wing. They just didn't want their own people, kind of losing power. But now those days are over too. Like I don't think the numbers come out all the time, but religion is on a massive
It
decline
is.
in this country. And I know that if we all like to side online and we hear Nick Fuentes talk, like we think that there's this like resurgence of like
Uh,
pre-Vatican II Catholicism, and like that Christianity is rising again. Like unless you're Ye or Andrew Torba, like that isn't the case.
mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So what do I think? I think that some of these things will stay local. Like I think you'll just have like little cantons of old school America like throughout the country, and they just won't pay attention to what's going on. But remember, even in the most right of right states, there's a city right around the corner, that I mean, who would have thought Colorado would be blue?
Mm-hmm.
Who would have thought that Montana was getting there?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Idaho too, Arizona. Who would have thought that Arizona was going to be, basically blue? All
Barry
these,
Goldwater State.
yeah. Like, I mean, someone just asked me, do I think a secession is necessary in America? Necessary, yes. I don't know how it happens. That's my issue. There's no line you can draw where you're not, at the very most you're doing for succession is you're making weaker parts of the country that are on the same path that we're on right now. Like there's still going to be shithole leftist cities in any part of red America that you carve out. And if history is any judge, which there's been a lot of this for a while now, population exchanges don't happen. Like you're not going to split America into two parts and go, okay, you guys get all the blacks and shit libs and all of this, and we'll take all of these people. Like it doesn't happen. People aren't just going to up and move and go to the other country. You'll see that the demographic problems are still just as much of a problem. You'll see that crime is just as much of a problem, and you'll see that even the people that are like kind of moving to red or blue America, they still don't like each other that much. Like yeah, they might see more eye to eye than they ever did with the polar opposite. But regionalized America creates just another Europe where we'll be either fighting with each other or outsiders all the time. So, would I like to see secession? I think that it would be great if we did see it. I just don't have any idea how it happens in a way that isn't the same as if it just was a complete collapse anyway.
And the last question is: do you suppose that people who think that America it can be saved because of the Constitution, which is an argument I think we both heard quite a lot. I think that the Constitution will prevent America from becoming some sort of, third-rate hellhole. Do you think that this argument of the Constitution being this basically superhero-like document will continue to hold water with people on the right? Because it's the right typically that says the Constitution, the Constitution, the Constitution. I mean, the left uses the Constitution all the time for its own benefit, but it's more on the right that you see this basically religious devotion to it as this more or less Jesus Christ-like savior figure. Anything to say about this bizarre Constitution worship, Halsey?
Yeah, but you're actually not right about that. The left worships the Constitution just as much as the right does. It's just the parts of it that they believe are important. Like, you go and talk to any leftist and tell them that you want to put prayer in school, and watch how quickly they start talking about separation of religion and state. That they start talking about the Establishment Clause. Like, to them, that's so sacrosanct. You might as well not even have a constitution or a country if you're willing to violate that. The right, who loves to talk about free speech, the only reason we're talking about free speech right now is because we've been silenced for a while now. Before this, everybody on the right loved being anti-free speech. They tried to pass a constitutional amendment outlawing flag burning.
Yep.
As if anyone gives a shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, they were going to make it a constitutionally illegal act to burn an American flag. I can't even tell you how many movies they've tried to get shut down over the years, or music. They've never been very free speech. They're just pro free speech now because they're getting kicked off of every platform known to man, for what they say. But trust me, I mean, Elon Musk, I'm a free speech absolutist. I want people to be able to say whatever they want. Yeah, until they start putting the location of his plane on Twitter, then all of a sudden he's all about censoring. Or he kicked Ye off. He's not letting Alex Jones back on. So for a free speech absolutist, he's not really all that absolute. And like, the right loves to talk about the Second Amendment, but if you tell them that the cops like illegally went to somebody's house and to get drugs or something, you think they're sticking up for the Constitution at that point, going, "Hey, wait a minute, that was against search and seizure." No, they're looking at then they become back the blue. Then it's, no, we support the blue, even if they punch somebody in the face to get in the house and then raped a child on the way. They found that dime bag of pot in that person's room, so it was completely justified.
It's really something else how there's a lot of constitutional hypocrisy on both sides. Although I will say that the Constitution is such a terribly flawed document that it opens itself up to 1,001 different interpretations and then some. And obviously, its words are so vague and nebulous that it basically invites this level of confusion, that to see folks be hypocritical about what's in it, or at least the application of various constitutional protections, and then to use the Constitution for partisan purposes, it's totally unsurprising, because the Constitution, far from being some, a divinely ordained document, some on the right claim, or as some guarantor of equality, as folks on the left would allege, it's really just a very old document that is remarkably inefficient in providing for individual rights and liberties. That's not to say it doesn't have many good ideas in it. It does. I'm not someone who thinks that the Constitution is evil or anything like that. I just think it's a very flawed document that has not withstood the test of time very well, because obviously we're in a situation where the Constitution is effectively changed all the damn time without it ever having to be formally altered, because judges can just keep reinterpreting whatever in the hell it is they want to read into the Constitution, and they read into the Constitution and then reinterpret it to mean whatever it is that they've read into it. So that's what I'm saying. So the fact that the Constitution allows this speaks to how absurd it really is on a functional basis, and it also it should make one not terribly shocked that there's so much hypocrisy about protecting and defending constitutional norms and the constitutional order, blah blah blah.
Because you know why? The Constitution has always been cultural. Like, if you'll notice that the vast majority of people that supported certain aspects of the Constitution, it always moved in waves.
Absolutely.
Like everybody was all about states' rights until they weren't. Then all of a sudden it was all about America first, and the centralized federal government and the North kicking the shit out of the South, then all of a sudden the Constitution didn't matter anymore because culture was more important. But then after they raped the South and burned it to the ground and let them all back in, then it became cultural again. Then it was about, okay, we all can get along with the Constitution because in the South we'll make them listen to the black people, but they don't have to like, actually like be equal to them or anything. Like we'll allow the segregation, we'll allow all this. So it was a cultural thing, and it still is. Like when they issued the Miranda warnings, when abortion was made legal, all of that. I don't care what anyone says. If people really were that up in arms over abortion being legalized in the 70s, you would have seen like mass violence going on. Like and trust me, I am not encouraging anyone to do anything violent, but when you hear pro-life people talking, right? And they say abortion is 100% murder, like you are murdering a child, then why are you watching it happen? If you really believe that, if you believe that every day an abortion doctor is coming to their office and murdering 7 or 8 babies or however many it is, people, he's murdering people, why aren't you stopping him physically? Like, if you heard that there was a house up the street from you that was kidnapping children on their way home from school and torturing and murdering them, there's no way that you would go on Fox News to bitch about it. Like you would do something. You would rally your neighbors. You would go burn the house down. You would grab the guy when he was coming out and beat the ever loving shit out of him, if not kill him. Like that is how you act when there's people committing mass murder amongst you, and you can do something about it. But no one ever did. So it kind of rings a little hollow, And I'm sorry, but I know a lot of pro-life conservatives whose daughters were pregnant and then just weren't anymore.
Uh-huh.
You know what I'm saying? So I think that there's a lot of people that pay lip service to things like abortion. But in the end of the day, most people just want you to be able to do something about a first trimester abortion. Even if you think it's a horrible thing. Like, yes, do I culturally want there to not be a country that wants abortion? I would hope that that could be an ideal. That everybody gave a shit that much about children that the idea of having an abortion was abhorrent to everybody because why wouldn't you want children? But we're not that country or that people, and I don't know if that people actually exists. So,
Sure, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just saying it's like this idea that we're stopping the senseless murder of millions of children. As I said, it's always rang hollow. Like again, another example, if there was a place where they were doing in vitro fertilization, right? And they had 1,000 embryos frozen in their hospital and the hospital caught on fire. Your like end result would be to say to people, "Oh, that sucks." But if there were 1,000 actual children in that building, you would be scaling the walls, you'd call the fire department, you would do everything you could to save those children in that building. Why? Because I don't care what your conscious religion or anything else tells you, there is a difference.
Absolutely.
So and if you can't accept that and be honest with people about it, then it's you're being an NPC on the other direction.
Well, and the so-called pro-life movement has quite a few NPCs within it. As everybody knows, I'm not a fan of the so-called pro-life movement. But Halsey is correct. I think that when it comes to the obvious hypocrisy, what he's talking about here, the hypocrisy of the so-called pro-lifers, a lot of them, even though they claim that an egg, a fertilized egg that hasn't even been implanted in a woman's uterus, when they claim that that's just as much a human being as Halsey or I are, they obviously really don't believe that on the basis of their actions. And I'm glad they really don't believe it. They might tell themselves they do, but actions speak louder than words. And I'm glad that they're not taking crazy actions to, further some bizarre belief that this non-implanted fertilized egg is just as human as a 3-year-old girl. It's really, the whole so-called pro-life thing is just sad. I think I'm sure the Republican Party has kept it around because they thought it'd just be something they could use to get votes. But now that Roe is gone, in the manner of speaking, the shit got real. And so they're confronted with this movement that's causing them all sorts of electoral problems. And it will continue to, because in 2024, abortion is going to be on the ballot as a referendum. in several states, and that will gin up Democratic turnout. So the Republicans definitely backed themselves into a corner with this so-called pro-life agenda. It was a good strategic move when Roe was never really on the table. But now that Roe not only got on the table, but was decimated on the table, abortion becomes something that's really hurting the GOP.
Yeah, it is. And I got to run.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Halsey, great discussion. I look forward to the next one.
Next year we'll have another one right at the beginning of the year.
Absolutely. Take good care, Halsey. Thank you very much for tuning in, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion. Have a great day.